person before moving on to questions from those in Zoom. As mentioned, please use the hand raise function should you have a question on Zoom. We'll go ahead and start with a question from Damian Calhoun. Damian, go ahead.
Hey, Greg. Did this break come at the right time for you? I mean, coming off the loss, of course, maybe you can get a little time to, put that behind you. But the way the club was playing, do you think this sort of comes at the right time for you?
It's tough to say. I mean, I like the stretch that we're on was good. I thought, against Vancouver, we just got off to a really poor start. Even after that, down a man, even down 3-0, I thought, we had our fair share of the game for sure, scored 2 more goals, got ourselves into it. But in terms of timing, I don't know. I don't get too terribly caught up in it. And for us, we're going to use this time period to try to win a trophy, to try to get better as a team, add a couple things into what we want to do in the latter part of the season, add a couple faces here or there during this window, and get as healthy as we can and compete. But the guys are excited about the tournament and the opportunity, and 6 games or whatever it is to try to win a championship. So we'll approach that. And nobody really wants to be off for a month, so the games are also important to try to continue to establish some rhythm and some process where we're continuing to improve for also the final stretch of the season. So lots there still for us to be done, and we're approaching it certainly with the right mentality and the right attitude.
And what are your thoughts on facing León right out of the gate? They played Friday and had I think 2-2 in regulation. Then they had the long PK shootout. But what are your thoughts on facing them to kick things off?
Yeah, good team. Very organized inside of their possessions. They can really stretch you out. They typically are in a 3-4-3 where their wide guys really are sideline to sideline, and they can really space you out and create some problems, which we saw in the first half against Vancouver, and we also saw in some of the game against LAFC. And so we've got to be good about, if we can get pressure to the ball, then we can minimize the amount of the switches that they're able to hit, because they will go from center back to wing back, center back to wing back, which can just open you up and get you really spread out. So if we can get pressure to the ball, then we can minimize some of that and make them play smaller ball. If we can't, then we just got to make sure that we can protect ourselves and manage the spacing that they tend to take against us and control their attacks, protect our goal. And when we get possession, they're not a team that is shy in terms of trying to step out and get pressure to you. They're not going to just back off and give you the ball. So, again, we've got to be positionally disciplined. We've got to be able to play, our style is to play through the pressure, certainly in the right moments, which requires us to be in the right spots, moving quickly, be prepared, moving the ball fast, but also recognizing the moments where if they get overextended, that we can play a little bit direct and maybe play a little bit of 1v1 in transitions or in some of those longer moments. So it's a great competition. They're a great team. Obviously, they won CONCACAF, so they're no shortage of talent on their side. So it's a good challenge for us. If you're going to play these tournaments, you want to play the top teams and see where you're at and try to learn a little bit about yourself and get better through the process.
Thanks, Damian. Scott, go ahead.
Hey, Greg. With a Champions League spot on the line, does that make this a priority type tournament?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't know if we're looking straight ahead of just trying to get to that Champions League spot. I think, again, what served us best through this stretch is that we've just approached each individual game as its own sort of process and trying to get a good result in that game. And if you can do that, then you give yourselves a chance to advance in this tournament, and then you give yourself a chance. Once you get into the second round, then you can start talking about some of that stuff. In these early stages, I think it's for us, it's really about, again, our performances and trying to set ourselves up for good results, get the right amount of points to get out of our group play, and then we can start to shape up what kind of knockout play looks like and trying to get to Champions League positions or winning the tournament or things like that. But certainly the fact that there is something that you are playing for certainly entices everybody in this Champions League spots. I've heard there's more money in this event than any event in the history of the league, which is, I don't pay too much attention to it, but I know for players and for people that think about stuff like that, for us, it's just, again, I think what has served us through this time is just really focusing on getting better with our performances each game, getting better with our identity, things like that, executing better.
Where are you guys health-wise? Is there anyone who will not be available?
Health-wise, we're decent shape. Chris will be out. He entered into actually concussion protocol. I think it might have been the header that came right after the first goal. It was a kind of a collision between the two. He didn't have any symptoms during the game, but started to feel a little bit of something after the game. So he's on the tail end of concussion protocol, and so we won't use him on Tuesday and probably be available for the weekend. I think outside of that, everybody else is, unless I'm missing somebody, Mark and his ankle, yeah. He's out, but he's on the field doing some return to play stuff, especially straight ahead stuff. Right now it's just about gaining the lateral movement, the ball striking, stuff like that. So he's questionable for the weekend, but he's for sure out for Tuesday.
And lastly, just MLS has a pretty crowded schedule to begin with. Throwing this in there, it made for a difficult first half of the season, and that a lot of teams, yours included, had a lot of Saturday, Wednesday kind of games. And then we get this stretch without games to fit this tournament in, and then it's a crowded end. Are we just putting too many competitions into the window that MLS has, given the roster situation?
There's a lot of games, and the games come fast and furious. In addition to that, one of the challenges in our league is just the sheer distance that you have to travel in our league. It's in Europe, they play a lot of games as well, but the distances that they travel are much shorter, and the time zones aren't 3 time zones here or 3 time zones there. And also, I think when you play so many games and a lot of competitions, you want a bigger roster, extended in terms of your quality, things like that. If you want to prioritize each of these things and make each of these things important, and where you're really trying to win it, you can't run a small roster through all of these games. It's just really, really difficult. So I think the catch is, one of a couple things. If we want to keep it like this, then we've got to find a way to extend our rosters in terms of maybe some of the resources, to expand your roster so you can have higher quality in terms of rotations and stuff like that, and bring guys in if you truly want to really compete in every one of these events. Otherwise, I think you do have to be a little bit selective between when and where you throw out your guys, your top guys, because it just becomes a game of attrition in a way over the course of a season. And so, for us, we want to be a club that can prioritize all of these things in the right ways. We're still in the process of kind of roster building. Plus, we lose a couple guys to season-ending situations. You find yourself a little bit thinner as you consider those things. So we're trying to make smart decisions. We're not going to put anyone out that might be at risk or in a position where we're trying to recover them. But at the same time, we want to put on the best showing and get as far as we can in this and see if we have a chance to win it.
Thanks, Scott. We'll go to a question from Francisco. Francisco, go ahead.
Coach,
Yes.
thanks for your time. The coach of the León club points of the MLS teams have the advantage for playing locally. What is the advantage?
Yeah, again, I think for us, we're training in our facilities, we're sleeping in our beds, we're in our natural day-to-day sort of environments, and for the teams that come up from Mexico, certainly they're on the road for extended periods of time, and they're traveling through these different scenarios. Doesn't make it easy. So that's what I would say is the challenge. I think for the Mexican league teams is going to be, especially the longer this goes, the more time that they spend on the road and the more different venues that they go through the process. So. That's just something that they're going to have to manage, and it does create a challenge for those teams in particular, I think.
What is the great weapon of León for this match, for this challenge?
Yeah, I think the way they're able to pressure, create turnovers, create transitions, attack fast out of those transitions is for me probably their greatest strength. Again, as I said, they have a way of pretty quickly getting into a man-on-man type of scenario, and disrupting the game and causing transitions that you then have to manage, especially for a team like us that wants to have the ball and we look to play through pressure a lot of times. It's going to be our challenge, which is something I really enjoy. I think it puts a real challenge on our team. We're not a team that always plays direct and beyond the pressure. It's for us to have to find solutions and make smart decisions. And so that's where I think they're going to create a lot of issues for us. And we've got to be able to protect ourselves. When they have the ball, is that we don't get ourselves too stretched out. Because again, I think as we saw against LAFC and in the first half, specifically against Vancouver the other day, they did a great job of just spacing out the field and making it difficult to get pressure to the ball. And in the first half, Vancouver played in a 3-4-3, and they were just hitting the diagonals in behind those wing backs, and it caused a lot of problems for Vancouver. So we just got to make sure that we stay connected and that we solve the pressure without putting ourselves into bad situations, that we can finish attacks and make their goalkeeper and make their defenders make some plays. And we got to score. We got to score when we have opportunities. That's for me in CONCACAF back in the past. It's always come down to maybe not a ton of chances. It's come down to efficiency and which team can take their chances when they get their chances. Doesn't usually come down to 10 or 15 chances per team. It literally comes down to 3 or 4 chances when top teams play each other. So we've got to be efficient around the goal and protect ourselves.
Thanks, Francisco. We'll now jump into questions from those on Zoom. We'll go ahead
You
first.
mentioned that you guys like to press, and we know they
Go
like
ahead,
to
John.
press.
Coming.
Their left back sort of like tucks in, and their right back is the one that goes forward. So do you feel like that's an area where you can attack? Because some teams are a little cautious in pressing them. I know they also like to use the long ball. So do you feel like maybe attacking them more from the right and being patient, picking your spots, when to attack, will be some of the keys in this match?
Yes. I mean, I think, we've seen them utilize a couple different types of presses, for sure, using the left wing back at times, tucking inside it. And in those instances, it looks a little bit like a 4-2-3-1 when they're pressing. Others, they'll keep him a little bit wider and they'll clog up the middle. So there's different ways. For us is to be able to read what's happening inside of the game and how they're pressing and who's releasing to who and who the extra man is, because they typically will try to keep a +1 in the back, which means we should have a +1 to initiate or to start attacks, and it's being able to always understand where the 2 versus 1 is or where the 3 versus 2 and the extra player is. And then as they release, being able to try to find, again, the open player and the open seams. And so, this is a principle-based game, which is what we're about. It's not always about just a specific shape. It's about, what the opposition is doing, where the spaces are, and where the superiorities are. And so our job is to find that once the game kicks off, and based on our shape, we'll see how they organize their pressure against us, because it's never going to be the same. Depending on what the opposition, us in this situation, is doing, they're going to adapt the way they want to press us. And so for us is to be able to solve that problem. But it certainly is going to be about selecting our moments, when to press, when not to press. It's going to be about selecting our moments, when to play through pressure, or if they release to go man-on-man and they're 3-on-3 in the back, about getting the ball forward and giving our guys up top a chance to sometimes play a little bit and not being opposed to playing direct at times. So it's a game of, for me, it's a game of problem solving and recognition of what's going on the field, but also being smart about and being mature about choosing the moments that are appropriate inside of the game. And so I look forward to this. This is it's a little bit different than what we see from some of our other teams in the league. So it's a nice new challenge for us.
Thanks. We'll go next to a question from Robert Jalen. Robert, go ahead and unmute yourself and you can ask your question.
Hey, Greg, thanks for the time. Tony Alfaro had his debut against Vancouver, and he had a positive 45 minutes. Do you think he's ready to go a full 90 against León? And then who do you see him pairing best with Jalen Neal or Kelvin Leerdam?
Sorry, was it Tony Alfaro? Is that the question?
Yes,
okay, sorry, I just didn't hear the first name. Yeah, I think Tony's made a nice, quick integration. One of the reasons we liked Tony is, having played at Seattle, having played at New York City, these are possession-based teams. He's comfortable with the ball. He's been in structures that are similar to ours with similar principles to what we have, which which is a nice fit for us. Jalen is someone who's played a lot for us during the course of the season. We love his upside and how he's developing as a player. Kelvin has been not a surprise, but it's been a pleasant sort of slot into that position because he's just a good, mature soccer player who makes solid decisions. I don't necessarily see Kelvin as a long-term center back for us. I do see him as a guy who can fill in that space like he did as needed, and he actually did a really nice job. But getting Jalen back into the mix is important for us, getting Chris back into the mix, getting our natural center backs back together and kind of growing back together again and getting used to each other is going to be important for us. So, you look for that over the tournament more so than us adapting per se.
Thanks. We'll go next to a question from Orlando Castellan. Orlando, go ahead and unmute yourself and you can ask.
Gracias, buen día, profe. ¿Qué tanta ventaja hay para ustedes el jugar este partido contra León ya sabiendo el resultado que hubo entre Vancouver y León y que León lleva 2 puntos y Vancouver 1? ¿Es ventaja para ustedes para poder salir menos presionado el día de mañana y tener un buen partido contra León en su cancha?
Not hearing it like this. Go ahead.
Could you repeat that again?
I would normally kind of understand, but not in this. It's not very clear. Sorry, go ahead.
Ok. Le decía que si es ventaja el saber ya el primer partido que hubo entre León y Vancouver, si para ustedes es menos presión para poder jugar mañana un buen partido y sacar un buen resultado en casa.
I think it's helpful. I think anytime you get an opportunity to to see an opponent that you don't see very often, play an opponent that you just played, it can be helpful for sure. Understanding that we play different than Vancouver means that I'm sure that they'll take a look at us and slightly adapt some of the stuff that they're going to do as well. But it's always beneficial when you can. I think when you can see an opposition, one more time, maybe an environment that you understand a little bit better than them just playing against other Mexican League teams, that can be good information to be able to utilize. But we will approach the game with a vision of how we want the game to look, how we anticipate they might play, but we also want to be adaptable to the situation and understand that it may not look exactly the same, and we've got to be able to adapt inside of this particular game against this particular opposition.
Thanks. We'll go back. Robert, I believe you had a quick follow-up question. Robert, if you want to jump back in real quick.
Yes, I did. Thanks, Greg. So you mentioned you're trying to add a couple new faces. The team recently has been linked with Jesus Manuel Corona, Tecatito, and Rogelio Funes Mori. What's your comment on these links? Is there anything there? Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, comments for me, I didn't catch the first name. I caught the Funes Mori, but I didn't catch the first one. It just doesn't come through very clear in here, so I'm not catching every word.
That's Tecatito, Jesus Manuel Corona.
Yeah, not much into those rumors. Again, the challenge for us is with our transfer ban, if you will. Our options are players who are free, which we're trying to work through. A small number of players who are out there that fit the profiles that we would like to add to our team, short term and long term. And players who are inside of our league. And anything outside of that is more of a question of long-term, like the winter and adding to our team next year and things like that. I don't know specifically those two players, their specific situations. I know them as players, but I don't know their specific situations. But there's nothing imminent as it relates to those guys.
Awesome. Greg, I believe that's all we have time for today. We appreciate everyone on the call, and we appreciate your time. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining.
Take care.